So, when you think about all of the positions you've been in, all the educational environments you've been in, whether it's a classroom, administrator, or when you were over everything at Kestrel, do you think, or what do you think the impact of suspensions could be on school climate?
So obviously suspensions typically do not have a positive impact on the school climate at all.
Really?
Yes. What I feel is when kids are suspended, unless there is some type of remediation that comes with that suspension when they come back, and some type of parental involvement or family involvement, it's not a direct changer of the behavior. And so therefore, when they come back to school, they'll repeat the behaviors, maybe not on the same scale, but they'll still have that behavior. So the school climate still sees the behavior. The students and the teachers still see it on a different level. But unless there's some changes made at the school level and at the home level, I don't see a big change in the school climate, the impact of suspension.
So you don't see the suspension as a deterrent at all?
It is a deterrent because kids don't want to be suspended. They don't want that stigma, but the direct result of the suspension doesn't change their behavior coming back. So it will curb it. It will curb it. They may not do it to that level, but unless you do some things to change it at the school level, i.e. they get into an altercation, unless you do some type of alternative to getting into a physical altercation and teach them some conflict resolution, that behavior doesn't change.
Like a peer mediation or something like that?
Something peer mediation, conflict resolution, one-on-one mentoring, that behavior doesn't change.
Or just like a one-time kind of?
Over time, but more importantly, as soon as they get back, as soon as they return to the school, they have to change their mindset in school moving forward. So that's the key, making sure they understand that their thought process has to change every day they walk into the school building.
So when you think about that, say you think about teachers, we've taught, we've been doing this 20 years. And you think about the people that that you look at and be like, she ain't gonna make it. It's too much on her, it's too much on him. You think about those teachers who you think are gonna make it for whatever reason. Most of the time it's usually classroom management.
Right.
They got so many kids out of control, they are sending so many kids to the office, so many referrals or whatever. As a leader, as a building level leader, AP, principal, district leader, LEA leader, what do you think can happen to improve their time in education, their interactions with kids in education? Because, historically, people with, less experience are going to be the ones who had the kids in the office the most.
Right.
Which means kids ain't going to like them. And it's going to, it'll create some type of problem.
Yeah. I don't know the answer. I don't know how to get there. But the overarching theme is relationships. So I don't know how to teach someone to create a relationship with a person. But those that have strong relationships with students, kids, children, whatever you choose to call them in this scenario, those are the ones with the least amount of problems. Now, once that relationship is established, now we can start talking about education. We can start talking about classroom management, how you are preparing the kids for the future. But like you said, those with no experience or little experience don't usually have good relationships and don't have a rapport with kids. So therefore, the kids don't even acknowledge them as a teacher yet. And so a lot of their problems come from, I don't respect you, therefore I'm not listening to you. Now, again, I don't know how to teach people how to build a relationship, but if you have a relationship, you have more control, you have control of the environment, and that's what needs to happen.
So then, like, if you have a teacher first year, third year, who's been in a long time and he or she is still having the same classroom management issues. When you start looking at, okay, what are my needs for staffing coming up? Are you looking at that person like, is he or she leaving? Is it depending on like what they teach? You know, we all know math, science is language, you know, stuff that's hard to get and keep. Do you look at all of that, or do you just look at your presence is creating a problem?
Correct. So that answer has changed because I've been at 5 schools. At 3 of them, we've had resume upon resume upon resume in which I did have the freedom and luxury to say, you're not cutting it for whatever reason, I'm going to look elsewhere. Whereas I've been in 2 schools in which a warm body in there consistently is, you know, the overarching factor. Just being honest. So, you know, I'm at a place now where if you're not making those strides and those efforts and building those relationships, this may not be the place for you. And I have that freedom, if you will, because this is a place people want to work. And therefore there's plenty of applicants.
Do you all have like any improvement plans, or is it just?
No, we have improvement plans, and there's coaching and there's mentoring.
Is it required or is it optional? With like mentoring and coaching?
It's made available, so I would say optional. But prior to getting to that place where we're thinking about replacing you, it becomes mandatory. And it's mandatory from the administration to either collaborate and meet with us, meet and collaborate with your mentor, meet and collaborate with a peer, meet and collaborate with any of those or multiple of those on a regular basis. I've gone as far as to require teachers to add to their lesson plans relationship building opportunities or strategies that they're trying to implement.
Between them and students or
between them and
staff?
students. Because again, that seems to be the biggest factor to me in most discipline issues, because I've seen students get 4 and 5 referrals or write-ups or reflections, whatever you call it, in one class, and the period before that and the period after that have 0. So something's changing in that environment. We ask the student, tell me about your day, what'd you do first period? Oh, Mr. So-and-so did such and such and such and such. What'd you do second period? Oh, Miss such and such did such and such. What'd you do third period? Nothing. What'd you do fourth period? Oh, Mr. So-and-so, he was telling us about. So wait, the first thing out of your mouth is the teacher. When it's not the teacher, there's an issue. So you've already internalized that person is not an advocate for me or positive with me or something I need or want.
So, you know, you got a beautiful little girl. When you start thinking about schools for her beyond where you work or beyond where her mama worked, if you had to pick a school for her, because her mama in elementary school, you know, you have the width, you can do whatever, K-12. Beyond that, when you're looking at choosing schools, and we already know the big things. We want to know, is it safe? We want to know what the curriculum is like. We want to know what programs they have, all of that stuff. Have you ever looked at discipline? Because you the disciplinarian, and I know we don't expect our kids to be in the office for nothing.
Correct.
But have you ever looked at any, like, would you even think to look at discipline? And I know it's because you have a daughter, and you know.
Yeah.
and a bright one at that. So,
I mean, the honest answer is no, and but I'm in a different situation, meaning my wife works in the K-8 environment, I work in the K-12 environment. Unless something drastic happens for some reason, I wouldn't even entertain her going anywhere else.
Right.
So if she came to us and said, hey, I want to do blank, they have a program at blank school.
Right.
Yes, discipline would be a big part of
what you look at.
What I look at, the safety of the school as a whole, obviously. But that would be more important to me than the curriculum. Because if they provide something that she has a genuine interest in, I want her to pursue that. Because to me, it doesn't matter what curriculum you use, what methodology you use, there's going to be certain foundational educational things that you're going to gain through high school.
Right.
If you go get it, it's there for you.
Right.
And my goal is to put her through 4 years of college, and then whatever happens, happens.
At least amount of fun.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're going to let her, obviously have some freedom and some choice in that.
So like if she said she wants to go to DSA. She's been dancing forever. She wants to go to DSA to dance. Or she wants to go to Hillside because their theater program is amazing.
Exactly.
Then what you looking at, you're like,
Right. Then that's where the other factors come into play. And unfortunately, for her, I'm still the parent. Right. And I know what's available here. So you're going to have to provide me something that is better for you that you're going to get somewhere else. They may have a better blank, say it's dance or say it's theater, and they may have a better program there. But holistically as a school, unless I think you're getting a scholarship to Juilliard, that's not going to be the overarching theme. The overarching thing is what kind of education you're going to come out with. Are you going to be safe, you're going to be happy, you're going to be healthy, and provide the next step to college. So if you have a top-notch blank program, but everything else falls off, your discipline's down here, your safety's down here, your teachers, it's not going to be an option. But if it's something that's comparable and they provide something that is not provided here, then yes, we would entertain that.
Entertain it, but not necessarily just be like, go ahead.
Correct. She's still going to be an 8th grader.
You're trying to make big girl decisions.
Exactly.
So when you think about, back to the classroom management piece, when you're doing your walkthroughs and your classroom evaluations or whatever, and you're noticing things that if are a habit are going to be detrimental to being able to maintain classroom management, I guess, especially when you're interacting with black boys. What, how do you correct that without making it a racial issue, or is it just plain and simply a racial issue?
So obviously there's different techniques that I use, and there's different things that happen in the course of a day. Typically, you always want the least invasive. So if I see a behavior that's happening, typically I correct it.
Right there in that moment?
Right then and there.
Even if it's the teacher doing it?
Even if it's the teacher doing it. But I'm not going to display it as I'm correcting the teacher. The teacher says, okay, everybody has 5 minutes to do blank. And I know everybody's going to get it done in a minute, or I've seen it done in a minute. I would chime in and say, hey, I only have 5 minutes, so I want to see what you're going to do next. So guys, you have 1 minute to complete this task. Let's see if you can do it. Go. Therefore, it's not calling the teacher out, but it's definitely showing that you can give a different point of view and see if it works. Because then if it doesn't work, I can easily say, hey, it's my fault. Maybe we needed more time, but I'm glad you guys tried. Then I can go to the teacher and say, listen, 1 minute was too short, but 5 minutes was far too long. At a minute and a half, they were all completed. Therefore, if you give them 3.5 minutes of downtime, you can expect some off-task behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I did it. So depending on, again, what the situation is and how it presents itself, if they say you got 10 minutes of silent reading, everybody's silently reading, we know it's not going to last, I can pull the teacher to the side and say, hey, you might want to cut that short because blank. If it's just an individual student behavior, I can correct it because I'm an administrator in the building, and it doesn't matter what was said, it doesn't matter what the teacher said. I can correct the behavior and then have a conversation with the student and or the teacher as to why that's going to fester into something bigger if it's not identified immediately. So yeah, that's the way I handle it. But I always say something, and even if I don't change the behavior or correct the behavior, I make mention of it so later we can revisit it, and there's a point in which the teacher can reflect upon when I was there. You don't want to say, hey, yesterday when I was walking by, I noticed. The statement now is, when I spoke to so-and-so in your class yesterday, he was doing blank. Why did you allow blank? Or what was the purpose? Or why did you feel that that was okay? So I always say something to make a point that they can remember so we can follow up with a conversation.
If you see things turning, if you see teacher A, new teacher or 30-year teacher, and 55 of her referrals are black boys, do you see that? Is it, how do you look at it? Is it something to address? Is it something to sit back and watch? Like what then happens?
Typically when situations like that arise, there's far more going on than just a referral. Because typically teachers that refer students often, there are other factors that get that ball rolling. And by the time it gets to the referral, the kid did the referral, but it should have been prevented. So I always try to look back at what happened before. What was the antecedent? What prompted this to get to this point? And so that's what I try to address. And then during my conversations, it's tell me why this happened after this happened. Why wasn't it fixed here? So it's about addressing the teacher and getting the issue solved, no matter who the student is. And typically there's behaviors that happen as a result of other behaviors. So if A happens, then B is going to happen. And B is a write-up. If you don't address A, it's almost a given that B is going to happen and you're going to have a referral. So it's about addressing A and trying to prevent A from even happening. So that's what I try to address with the teacher.
So what I'm really looking at researching and talking about is relationships, is the leadership position on how suspensions then impact the school, like financially, like socially, perception wise, and then what are some possible solutions to minimizing suspension, but also because ultimately what I would like to do is to do something to stem the flow of little black boys and Hispanic boys and girls on this pipeline of prison, right? So if you think about, when I think about administration, and my own son being in school and all the little, black guys I went to school with who stayed in trouble, because we both know some kids, some of us might have been that kid, who stayed in trouble, but we had parents who were, that's not okay. You're not gonna keep doing that.
Right.
If somebody called me off of my job to come to the school about you, it ain't gonna be okay. So how do we address, all these different facets of it so that it improves their lives ultimately, which will improve the life society, but also impact us as educators, because then we're not fighting the same fight that we've been fighting, and we're seeing our kids are going to do well because they're our kids. The kids we see don't always have that same support.
So, unfortunately, I think that the education system is just obviously a microcosm of our society. And so until we get a grip on our societal issues and how they are impacting the lives of children, I think we're in a sad state of affairs right now. And the family unit has been disrupted to a point in which a lot of our kids are just fighting uphill battles. And the 6, 8, 10 hours a day they're with us at school does not supersede the rest of their lives. So it's about understanding that and understanding where these kids are coming from and trying to find ways to make some type of connection. And again, it's relationship building. It's connection. It's understanding. It's making sure that when you are correcting them, the correction is applicable to their life.
So, I remember your mom saying, ain't nobody scared of that baby. Do you feel like physical, do you feel like the discipline from home is what's missing? Do you feel like, is it more than that? Is it less than that? Is it including that?
That's definitely a part of it, but I think it's the home structure, and there's not respect for the hierarchy at home anymore. Thus, there's not a respect for the hierarchy at school. Meaning, when we were coming up, it didn't matter if your mama was in California or in Hawaii or in China. If she said don't do X, you didn't do X. Period. But it was because there were 1,472 times she told you don't do it, you tried it, she corrected you immediately. And you knew there was a corrective measure coming. Now, because of the way the structure is, and mama's not home and daddy's not home, and you're staying with auntie and you're staying with grandma, and grandma and auntie aren't there, so it's pick and choose. There's no structure growing up to where you know the rules and routines to where you think about that as second nature. It's muscle memory. There's certain things you just do. And because these kids aren't growing up with these routines, they don't know what to automatically do. Then you get into a school setting where this teacher says chewing gum is okay, and this one says don't ever come in my room with gum no matter what. And then the third one is just ambivalent to it all. You're trying to play the rules game.
Which is,
because
where can I do this without getting in trouble? Because she said I could.
Right. Because when you go to mama house, you gotta be in the house at 3. Grandma say you can stay out till 8. Auntie say be in my house when I get there. All right, so what's the rule? Whereas when we came up, when you get out of school, you go home.
Directly.
Immediately. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Nowhere.
If I'm not there, you call me, we figure out what the next step is, but you better call me from inside the house.
This house.
It ain't, don't go to so-and-so's house and say, hey, can I stay over? No, that's not an option.
You should have been
But
home. Right.
But now, like, those type of routines just don't happen.
I can see that.
And so, again, it's the development, it's the society, it's families feeling the need for more money and less jobs, and getting a job wherever you can. When you get a job wherever you can without the education, then your hours aren't as consistent. Therefore,
it all plays
in order to make ends meet, you might have to work, 12 to 9. So now you're not home when your kid gets home. Now you're not home when your kid goes to bed. So what happens? Is it consistent? You know? So I think that's just an overarching theme that we're dealing with. And it's hard to get kids to get on one accord.
Because it's all just kind of falling apart. Then why do we come? What are we gonna do?
Because I honestly, there's no bad kids. I believe it. I've never had a kid sit across my desk with me and do anything bad to me.
What about that boy that was standing out there lying after he said it?
He was lying as a coping mechanism.
Right.
He wasn't lying to me.
He was lying to cover.
He was lying to cover. He knew he was wrong. He knew he was in trouble. All he knew was to lie. Because he didn't know what the magnitude of his trouble was.
Right.
But he still said, but Mr. Mitchell. He was still respecting me.
Right.
In the midst of his lies. So, he was a kid that made a poor decision, got caught, was in trouble, and didn't know how to get out of it.
Right.
Now, by the grace of God, I never made a mistake of that magnitude. But when I made the mistake, I knew there was a consequence coming. So at some point, I tried to lie my way out of it. But then I found out quickly the consequence for lying was far worse than the consequence for the action.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So
but if you don't learn that, and again, you look at people in high school and colleges and on the workplace, a lot of them haven't learned that lesson. And when you don't learn that lesson, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, we say it all the time. We were laughing. I was talking with some friends. The best basketball players at A&T were not on the basketball team. They didn't have the grades. They didn't do what they were supposed to do because they didn't learn the lesson, because they were the top player in their high school. So when I go to college, I'm just going to play. I don't got to go to this class. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. Well, when you get to college and there's a different set of rules and a different set of expectations, doesn't matter.
So you think if our expectations as educators is here, then our kids will be here. We'll come up here.
Yes.
And for the ones who don't?
For the ones that don't what?
Don't come up here. What do we do about those?
We'll still educate them, and they'll still make strides, and that's fine. But the problem is, when you say we as educators have our expectations here, that has to be all of us. All of us. And when we're all here, they'll all come up. So,
okay, say for instance, you got 5 teachers. Middle school team, 6th grade team, 5 people on the team. You say, okay, 70% of my referrals come from 6th grade. You all need to do something about this. You don't tell them to stop writing people up. You don't tell them to stop, calling kids out. You just say, do something about it. You notice that as you're doing your walk-arounds or whatever, that they don't seem to have control of their classes the way they used to. What then? You know what I'm saying? Like, because you know what your expectation is. These kids need to be here in school. If they're suspended, they're not learning.
Right.
So how do you, do you think that they stop writing kids up because they respect you? Do they stop writing kids up because they just don't know what else to do? Is it your responsibility to give them some other options? Like,
yeah, I mean, at that point, I would have to get involved, and so I wouldn't say 70% of referrals come from you guys. Y'all need to do something about this. What I would say is 70% of referrals are coming from you guys. This number is far too great. Come up with a plan of alternatives to keep kids in class, to motivate them, to keep them, to get their education. Bring it to me and let's discuss it. Because you can't just stop. Because if you just stop, then kids think they can do whatever they want.
Right.
Because if they don't see, and that's another thing, kids have to see something. And when you were earlier, I said there's got to be some kind of re-entry or remediation for a kid that's suspended. When one kid gets suspended, it affects 3 other kids more than it does that one kid. Because those kids see, wait, he did X, Y, and Z and got suspended? I'm not going to do that no more. Because they were doing it, they just didn't get caught.
Right.
And so they're affected by it. So when you see one kid do something and there's no removal of that kid, there's no consequence, it encourages these kids to do more. So that's what you got to look at when you're looking at these numbers holistically. It's not just that one kid, one action. It's what influence does that kid have on the class? How does the class react to it? Because there have been a lot of behaviors you've seen that have been outlandish, and some kids say, oh, that's just him. Don't even acknowledge it and then move on. Some kids say, oh wow, that's funny, you see what he did, I'm gonna do it too. So that's where the influence of the situation has to be taken into account, because again, you're 20 kids in the classroom, one cannot stop the education of all 20. And so that's where that removal or something has to take place.